Welcome to the newest episode of the Citizen Effect podcast. I'm Keith Whiddon, and I'm happy to be joined today by Erin. Of course, I am 100% of Whiddon Criminal Defense and 50% of Erase My Arrest. But we're going to throw it to Erin right now. So, Erin, for the listeners, tell everybody who you are, and where they can find you on social, internet, things like that.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. My name is Erin Morse, and I am a divorce lawyer in Orlando, Florida. I am 100% of the law office of Erin Morse, and we practice divorce and family law. We practice a lot of custody, and you can find me on social media at Law Office of Erin Morse. That's Facebook, Instagram, really everywhere, and Legal Morse of Action, as I have my own podcast.
Okay, so make sure that everyone is going and checking out that podcast. Where can you find that podcast?
Anywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you stream it, I'm there.
All right. Do you have it on YouTube as well, the video version, or no?
It is on YouTube as well, and we stream live most every Friday.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you joining me. And so first of all, you're in Orlando, Florida. I love Orlando, Florida because I love cruise ships. So that is my tie to it. But what is it about the Orlando area that either brought you there, kept you there, those kind of things?
I'm originally from Massachusetts, so I always tell my friends and family back home that you don't have to shovel sunshine, which is why I live down here. So I'm just, we're drowning in sunshine nearly every day, and it just can't get better. It's pretty hot most days, but me and Mickey Mouse are BFFs. So yeah.
What perpetuated that big change or that big switch from being in Boston, Massachusetts, and then moving to Orlando then?
I had moved down here originally for my husband. He was down here, and I thought I'd only come down, for the summer, kind of try on the relationship for size, and I just didn't leave.
Okay. I can relate in my own way. I didn't move across the country. I just moved across the state. But and here we are, or here. Well, there's no more we. It's here I am. All these years later. So, but still, I have remained. And how long into the practice of law were you able to open your own firm and even niche down into being divorce and custody and family law matters?
Yeah, I'm a pretty brave character. I opened up my own shop. I had a partner for a little while, but when I was a lawyer for 4 months, that's a little ill-advised for most people. But I was a paralegal really starting at 20 years old. So I had a lot of experience being in a law firm and working on it. I worked in a small shop, which means, you're the paralegal, legal assistant, receptionist, personal assistant. You really do everything in the law firm for your attorney. So I really got a good handle on everything that happens in a case, and it was in family law. So by the time I became an attorney, I had been working in the legal field for some 9 years by that time.
You had sort of a leg up on the rest of the competition, especially the competition that, again, 4 months out or even 1 year out of law school, maybe 2 or 3 years out of law school, didn't have.
Right. I knew how to draft a motion before I a motion. I knew what a case style was, and they don't teach you a lot of those things in law school. Drafting a motion, a case style, how best to format your motions to make it readable for the judge. I can tell you, I read certain other attorneys' motions, and I'm like, do you realize that as soon as I look at this, I don't want to read it? Like there's some science behind certain formatting to make your material more consumable, and I had that in my pocket already.
Well, and I guess that's one of the things is it's a known thing or a known factor among my employees is that the documents that leave this office must look a certain way. And even down to the particular font that's being used. And I've had other employees in the past that would mix and match fonts. And even though it's one or the other and they're in the same family tree, if you will, if I see the difference, I'm going to redline and say, this is the wrong font, fix it. And people would be like, what's the difference? And why are you worried about font or the way a paragraph is justified? And it's
Yes,
because,
justified.
yes,
Yeah.
and it's because of the way that the person reading the motion, if I'm spotting it, maybe the judge is going to notice, but they might. And it communicates that it's not necessarily professional or it's not as polished as it should be. And
Well, what
I want all my work to make sure I want all my work to be polished, and I want all my work to look a certain way and to feel a certain way and to read a certain way.
amen to that, right? If I could, say it louder for the people in the back, it's so important. The big picture that I typically give to my staff when I'm training them is you don't want the judge to look at this and go, those are two different fonts. You want them to go, this is an interesting argument. This is a
Yep.
legitimate argument. Why do I need to grant this relief? Why? Oh, I understand this, right? You want them looking at only the content and not the formatting. So if the
Yes.
content has enough white space that their eyes can follow those words and their eyes can follow exactly what's being communicated, you're going to have a higher likelihood of not only it being read, but it being granted. Because it seems maybe silly, but they will get a feeling when they read it. You want them to
Yes.
feel good about what you're saying and focus on what you're saying, and not the fact that it was 1.5 spacing and then 2.0 in another spot. That bothers me too. That's a crime
Oh,
I have.
that's
A
yes,
crime.
absolutely. That's a huge crime. Oh my goodness.
Straight to
And in fact,
jail.
I don't straight to jail. And in fact, I don't even know whoever invented and made a preset within Word that 1.15 is a default or is even an option, is even a preset option in Word. Whoever that person is, that person does deserve to go to jail.
I
So
would I would also like that if I could, because I know Microsoft is definitely listening. So since they're here, I would like to ask them if we could preset our formatting preferences. Soon as you install Word on a computer, they just ask you, right? What's your preferred font? What's your preferred spacing? What's your preferred, tab spacing? And every document would automate to that. I'm just saying, it would just make everybody's life better.
it would. Now, I'm going to share with you a hack since it's just you and I. What I do is I have sort of my form, if you will, or maybe my
Mhm.
basic settings, but I use Google
Yeah.
Docs.
Oh.
And every time that I have a letter and I have motions. And so whenever I need motions, I go to the motions doc and just make a copy of it
Mhm.
and rename it. And if I need the letter, I use the letter, rename it, or make a copy, rename it. And all of those things are already built in or baked in to the
I
document.
I'm gonna one up you. I have, Clio, and they have a document automation function, and whenever I need a motion, it's there, and everything is formatted, including filling in all the details on that particular case.
Yes, we do that as well. I was talking
Yeah.
about starting from scratch though. So, but
Oh.
you did one up me by going to the generate function built into your
Yeah.
practice management software.
Yes,
So,
yes. So that kind of clears that up, and I have a whole policy built out for my staff, and I'm like, "Did you read the policy?"
hmm so how large of a staff do you have today?
5. I have a staff of 5.
Okay, and is that broken down into paralegals and secretaries, or is there an intake specialist, or is there a dedicated receptionist? What does that look like?
So I have a full-time billing virtual assistant. I have a full-time paralegal. I have a receptionist. I have a full-time marketing paralegal who has both legal experience and marketing experience. And I usually operate, this position is yet to be filled as of right now, right? We're in transition. I usually operate with a second paralegal or a legal secretary, depending
Okay.
on that. And we are looking to hire another associate. So we're on the rise here.
Awesome. Now, you said that you started with a partner. Does that mean that you did that partner already have an established law firm, or was it you and someone else who decided to go out on your own together?
Yeah, so we worked at a big multinational firm together. And we did one of those things where we're like, "All right now, I'm out," and we,
Mhm.
dropped the mic and put in our notice same day. So obviously, with big firms, as soon as you put in your notice, they let you go. So
Mhm.
we knew what we were doing when we did it. So yeah, that happened. We did an exodus together and started our own firm.
Okay. And so it was just the two of you. I read a what book was it? I believe it was How to Build and Grow a Law Firm was one of the first
Mhm.
books that I read, and it
Yeah.
was do not do not start a law firm with a law partner on day 1, because all that will prove is that two lawyers can starve twice as fast as one lawyer can starve.
Hopefully she doesn't have the opportunity to see this because she has taken a different path in her career. But the reason why we didn't end up staying together is because, she did one area of law and I did another area of law. And listen, I have all good things to say about her, an excellent attorney. Where she's working and her clients are very lucky to have her. She's so smart, so great. But my area of law, family law, took off at just such a hyper rate that
Mhm.
it wasn't sustainable or even for me to be, she didn't work in this area of law. So at the time, I was working until 2, 3 a.m. in the morning and not really spending time with my family. And she was taking trip to Paris and going to happy hour every day. And I'm like, I'm dying. I need
Mhm.
staff. But, it wasn't her area of law. So she didn't have as busy of a schedule as I did. And it couldn't stop. And we went our separate ways because we had a different path, right? The two areas of law took a very different path, and I needed staff and I needed to start spending money so I could grow, and she didn't
Mhm.
have that same belief because it wasn't affecting her area. So I had to split off and do that. Again, she's really successful, really bright. It really was just kind of a product of our two areas of law that just didn't mesh from
Mhm.
jump. So
Well, that leads me to the question, what led to your area of law taking off at a rapid pace? Was there a sudden void in the market? Were there attorneys that left the practice or died, or what led to that?
very early in my career as having my own business, thought of my law firm as a business rather than simply a law firm. So I took marketing not in the traditional way that if you ask lawyers for advice when you're starting your own firm, they're going to tell you network, get
Mhm.
referrals, send referrals to other lawyers, network with people in the industry and do a BNI. And to me, I just didn't see it that way. That didn't seem in today's climate to be the best way to build a business because if you need a lawyer, you're not necessarily first going to go to your friend Sally, right? No
Mhm.
matter what. You're probably going to Google it, especially in family law. So I knew that if I could, land a way to have some Google, right? Some calls from that, I could flip those into clients as long as I got the phone ringing. So I really focused on my digital presence and got the phone ringing and just became so busy I was losing my mind and not sleeping.
And so whenever you say creating a digital presence, what did that look like? Organic social? Obviously you had Google. Was that Google local service ads? Was that Google pay
Yeah.
per click? Was that Google Map Pack?
So at first it was Google pay per click, and I had a couple of landing pages, and we tried a couple of different things to see really what would hit and what was landing into turning into people who were qualified calls. And at first when you start a practice, of course, you'll take cases that maybe you wouldn't take now, right? I can be a bit
Mhm.
more choosy because my clientele is more expansive. But at the time, I remember taking a child support hearing for $500 so I could help
Mhm.
defend somebody on child support. And, as you do that and you do a good job, those do become referrals eventually. But I remember doing things like that and limited appearances and maybe just appearing for a mediation if somebody didn't really have the funds. So, those were pretty low dollar clients, but they still needed help. And I really enjoyed that. And I ended up really making a good name for myself because I do have a passion for that and that took off. So it was pay per click. and I had landing pages, and then we had phone numbers so we could track what words were doing the best and what was getting us. And then we delve further into that, into, what does it look like to convert a client from a call to, having a consultation? What does a consultation need to look like? Should those be free? Should those be paid? I had to make a decision on that. So it really just evolved. And over time, I have evolved my presence to now have obviously social media, because that has a lot more say, and some people are typically want to look for someone on social media to know if what they're saying is legitimate, if they're making a decision, especially with a divorce, because a divorce is unlike criminal where they got arrested and they need a lawyer. So
Yes.
almost the first person who gets to that phone gets to that client.
Yep.
PI can have a similar outreach, but family law has a lot more decision making that they do. They contemplate it for longer. They typically have a life of about 6 months, I've learned, in really making this decision before a divorce is filed, if they're the person who's going to file. Now, in the reverse, sometimes people are served and they have 20 days to answer.
Right. So, what is that nurturing process for the client that is potentially 6 months out?
It's really actually being patient with them and allowing them the opportunity to give to you what their needs are. So I usually like to open my consultations. I don't talk about myself at all. I remind them, I'm like, hey, I know you found me on the internet, and there's hours and hours and hours of me talking there. So if you want to hear me just talk, you could go to the internet and do that. You don't need to pay for your consultation to hear me talk about myself or anything like that. You tell me what is going on and what you need, and let's go from there. Let's unpack it from there. Let's create your legal strategy in this, initial strategy session, and let's put you in a position to have all your questions answered, right? The timeline. Everybody wants to know, how long is this going to take? What the costs are going to look like. They want to know what's going to happen with their child support, alimony, who gets the house, who gets the retirement. So they want to know. And while I won't be able to give them the answer exactly on who gets the house and who gets the retirement or what happens with the kids, I can tell them about the process and what they need to know based on their cases. Everybody's life is different.
And what do you think? How is that different from the person who is served and they have 20 days to file a response? Does your consultation differ or vary in that situation?
No, other than me asking them what day were they served and making sure that I loudly advise them of their deadline. I'm usually like, do you have a pen? Write this down.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you choose me or someone else, you need to answer this. So be prepared, be ready for that. We need to make sure that their needs are also met, right? Just because they were served didn't mean they weren't also thinking about divorce. It's the more rare of the situation that serving the divorce papers is a complete surprise. Usually they
Okay.
knew it was coming, they talked about it, they thought about it, and it's oftentimes that person who maybe was served had already found me before
Okay.
because they did some research on it and they wanted to know.
And so social media what does your social media presence look like? Because you said that there's hours and hours of video,
Yeah.
talking about yourself. What does your posting schedule look like?
So we post now, we've recently increased. It used to be 3 days a week. We've now increased it to every day, making sure that I have a social media post every single day, and usually an hour long post from our podcast, because we do stream that live, and then we provide the podcast on our YouTube page. And then obviously it's the audio is blasted out to all of the podcast streaming areas.
Your podcast, is it more along the lines of we pick this subject, or is it we are interviewing people that are important in the industry?
It's a combination. So we've had a lot of the local judges. Usually, if a judge is running judge during the process by which the judges are running to get their seat or keep their seat, because here
Mm-hmm.
in Orlando and in Florida, they have to run again to keep their seat. So if they're doing that, we will typically invite the candidates of our choosing, right? Candidates that we would be supportive of. onto our podcast to have a platform so that they could reach people who are non-lawyers. It's very easy for judges to be in an area and an arena where they're with other lawyers, but not as easy to be out in the general public with people who actually want to know about them and what's going through the process. So we've had quite a few judges on our show. Once the judicial candidacies come back up, we'll pick that up again. We do a lot of Q&A, so I do charge for consultation. So if someone has just a quick question, which is a bit of a almost kind of a misnomer
Right.
in the
Always.
law, right? It never is. But
No.
that's the point of the podcast, is that they could log in, they can stream, and we'll take live questions, and we have questions that have been submitted, and I'll answer them on the air. So if they send in a question in any of our number of formats, including text messaging, our main number, I will answer it on the air.
Okay. Very cool. And I want to unpack the marketing paralegal, because this is someone who you said has paralegal experience, but also is marketing. Number one, is this a position that you created? Did this person hold themselves out to be a marketing paralegal? Tell me about the process of finding this person.
Yeah, I poached him. He was
Okay.
a paralegal in another law firm, and he had a podcast, and he was just a social butterfly, and he was always on social media. And I said, "Hey, I want someone who can do that stuff, but I really kind of need a paralegal." At the time when I hired him, so I can't give up the fact that I need to have space in my in my budget for both marketing and for a paralegal. So it was really a unicorn. But a lot of what he does came from me training. So I did invent this.
Okay.
I took a paralegal who had a particular interest in social media and being social and a podcast. And I provided a lot of training and a lot of, hit and miss type stuff. It's all in development all the time, right? Everything, always developing. So it was hit and miss. And we had him, start with a podcast and continue with our social media, trying to build that up and focusing on a lot of those kind of things that can fall to the wayside if you don't have someone focusing on it. So he's kind of the everything when it comes to marketing. And then he is, pinch hitter when we need paralegal services.
So what you're saying is that his overarching job or overwhelming majority of his time is spent in marketing, particularly social media marketing. And he
Yeah.
sort of fills in or picks up the slack whenever there's a need in your paralegal department.
Yeah, and he does a bit of intake too, because I consider that to be a very important part of marketing.
Okay. What does the marketing role that he plays? Is he sort of the first contact or?
No, our receptionist is the first contact, and she'll usually collect and schedule from that. But it's when after I've completed the consultation, he'll do the intake portion. So starting them on their case, getting them started, making sure we have all the documentation that we need, and setting them up on a timeline and making sure that we collect all of their information. Uh, Family law is very information heavy. I need a lot of very particular information, even for the petition. Very like intimate information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Birthdays, date of separation, date of marriage, a lot of those kind of things all have to go into the petition. And he will help and facilitate with that and the onboarding.
Gotcha.
So.
So if it's a doctor-nurse relationship, he's very much in the nurse role there.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Got it. So what is his future with you? What does that look like for him growing in the future? Do you believe that he's going to keep going in this direction of being a marketing? Are you trying to develop an in-house marketing team? What does that look like?
Yeah, eventually, as we grow, there's going to be an in-house marketing team where he will have an assistant to be on board with making sure that we have more of the daily posts and we have more video content, because that seems to be taking off, at least for us, and that we have, a portion of what we consider in our marketing is making sure that we market to our current clients. So I develop a lot of content that is just for our clients, that are private YouTube videos that only they will have access to. So that'll be a lot of, what to expect in a mediation, what should you expect at trial, how to prepare for a trial. It's, exclusive content for people who have chosen to do business with us as clients so that they can have all of the legal advice. And that provides an added benefit to our client, because then when I do have to speak with them and they're paying their attorney's fees for it,
Hmm.
I really get the opportunity to get to the meat of their case rather than the things I have to say in every case. And mediation is confidential, and I don't have to go in depth with those explanations for them. So it provides just an incredible amount of value for our clients.
As long as they do their homework.
I can't make them, right. I can't care
Right.
about their case more than they do.
Right. But I mean, I have a similar situation where I have I have videos that are very specific about, okay, this is what an arraignment is and this is what diversion is, particularly the diversion video, because I have a lot of clients that will qualify for pretrial diversion. And then I
Mhm.
say, hey, I actually made a YouTube video about this. Here's the link. Can you go watch it? And then, hey, let's set up an appointment to talk about diversion. And it's, hey, did you watch that video that I sent you? And half the time it's no. And so I have to repeat everything about pretrial diversion to them. So we don't necessarily get down to the meat and potatoes where maybe they ask questions that would have been answered in that video. So
Yeah. Well, and if you're in criminal the way I suspect you are, you're not charging them hourly.
no, no, I'm not. So
Yeah, so they're not motivated by it, right? So my clients
perhaps.
in the beginning, my clients in the beginning are advised, hey, I'm hourly. And if you know, watch the videos and you follow along and you complete the forms that we have, it's going to reduce your attorney's fees, or the initial payment that you make is going to go further for you. I'm
Yeah.
happy to explain it. I love talking. I talk a lot. I'll answer a lot of questions. This is fine for me. I do this for a job all day. But if you want to make sure that I answer your specific questions and you want answered exactly what happens in these instances, you will watch the video. So it comes with that, like, onboarding, right? So that onboarding paralegal, he reminds them, you're going to be sent these videos. They're exclusive to our firm. No one else gets access to them because they're full of legal advice and what you can expect in mediation, what you can expect in your timeline, what you can expect. And one of the very first videos really is a part of that onboarding. That, hey, if you watch the videos and you make sure you participate in completing the forms, we're going to have accuracy here, right? We're going to have a cohesive nature where I can really focus on the meat of your case. So, it's some people want to and some people don't, but they get two reminders, right? This automated video that comes to them with our CRM that will send these out. And then my onboarding professional, right, our paralegal, will have the conversation with them again, right? Hey, as a reminder, you cannot do this, but you pay hourly.
Is there a age gap where you see that, okay, people of this certain age don't go and do their homework?
Yes, there it, our generation, above millennials, our uh, Gen X and the baby boomers aren't always as keen on that kind of automation and efficiency. It seems disingenuous to them, and we really just pivot for them. If that's how they feel, we'll set them up for an in-person appointment, which I typically don't even do much of that at all, certainly since
Hmm.
COVID. But we could set them up for an in-person appointment, and one of the hardest things that comes through is mandatory disclosure, right? You got to paint the picture of your whole financial life with your
Hmm.
spouse and provide all the statements. So sometimes we have them really come into our office. Either they bring their laptop or we set up one of ours and we log into their accounts for them and have to pull them and email them for ourselves to make sure that they're compliant if they're not very capable of that. Now that's the more rare of the two. But yeah, sometimes we have to pivot for that. This is a service-based industry. You're in a service-based business. They are your customers, and it's my job to serve them in the way that they need. So it's, again, decisions that they get to make on how to handle their case and how to really take control of their case. That's another part of the video, is take control of your case and take control of the costs, right? That's
Hmm.
part of the title of the video, is like, why is it so expensive? Well, because it's worth
Because
it.
it's worth it.
First of all, yeah. And this is how you can make sure you take control. Be cooperative. Take your questions to the paralegal. Set a time certain phone call. We don't typically do things other than a time certain phone call with me because those pop-up calls and questions are time vampires, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
efficient for anybody.
No.
Mhm.
Have you found a common thread why your Gen X or above feel that that kind of automation is disingenuous?
If I had to guess, right, and everybody's a different person, so I don't know. I'm gonna generalize some things. It's impersonal, and sometimes they'll fill out the forms, but they will do, the bare minimum, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll kind of click through and get it done. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if they were thorough with their answers in these forms, I would have everything I need to complete their required pleadings. And they just don't think they don't find value in it. It's that they don't see it from that perspective, and they would rather have a phone call or a face-to-face meeting about it, but it runs their case, slower.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just a sign of the times, right? Where they grew up and what they grew up around was not this very technology automation built things, right? AI is probably blowing their minds, right? Chat GPT they think is going to take over the world, right? We have a Terminator coming
Right.
through.
And I ask that because I struggle with that so much because I keep trying to provide a service in this way. And in my mind, this should be so much more convenient for you if
Hmm.
you watch the video, if you do these things, if you follow this or follow that. And it's almost, well, you may think it's convenient, but it's not. And
Yeah,
I'm trying
yeah.
in my mind, and in my mind, it's like, how is it not convenient? You can sit on your couch and consume this, and then if you have a specific question, send in a text, send in an email, and let's just resolve it that way, as
Hmm.
opposed to, okay, call in, then schedule a time for an appointment, then wait by your phone for the appointment, and then exchange pleasantries, and then we can set up the question, we can ask the question, and then we can kind of deconstruct the in-betweens of the question, where the video that I may have on my YouTube channel may have hit anywhere from 30 to 70% of what we're talking about in this phone call that you had to wait a week to have. So
Yeah.
that's just
You might
my sharing my
you might need
experience.
Yeah, you might need to build out a separate communication package, right? Maybe you standardize it that way. You get 3 phone calls, right? Or a phone call before any hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's included. If you need more than that, pay for this package, or your staff, if they want to schedule a call that's outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
they have to maybe pay up front, right? You got to make a payment right now. We're happy to do that, but that's different, right? I am representing you in your criminal case,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the outline, right? This is your maybe make a little chart that
Mm-hmm.
has little arrows. This is when to expect a phone call. This is when you'll speak with me. You'll receive emails by update. If you want further than that, hey, why don't you just maybe you could make a prepayment on that package if you think you'd like to speak with me every week,
Right.
or you could watch these videos.
Yes.
So I think my clients are in a unique situation compared to yours, is that they're motivated because it is tied to an hourly rate, right? A communication is, they could either make sure that I'm available for their 8-hour mediation, which has an hourly rate attached to it, or they could have 6 phone calls with me about, but what do you think about the bikes?
Mm-hmm.
What if he has a motorcycle he didn't tell us about? You know, because if I have that conversation with them in the mediation prep meeting, or if I have that conversation with them, at another time, it's still the same information. I don't have a way to undo it or fix it or change their facts. So maybe build that out. Maybe
I
make it a concierge package.
I like the way that sounds, the concierge
Yeah,
package. So,
yeah, yeah.
but I mean, I'll be honest. I'm just trying to find a way to spend less of my time on the phone and also feel like people are getting the communication that they want. I shouldn't. I'm not trying to say that my clients are overly burdensome with their phone calls. It's just that I'm trying
Mhm.
to. In my mind, this would be easier for you. So what's the holdup? Why is it so hard to click through and look at the thing. So, and look at the
Well,
video.
if I can be so bold, I want to adjust your thinking, right? You're
Okay.
in a service-based industry. So
Yes.
what you have to do is start communicating what they should be expecting from you.
Uh,
If they feel like they don't know what to expect, it's going to feel chaotic. It doesn't feel like this. I developed this over time, right? This took me a while. If they don't feel like they know what to expect or what these timelines look like or when they expect to be on the phone with you, maybe you could systemize this. When they become a client, schedule them a call with you in a month and a half.
mhm.
And then when they have that phone call, you shoot them back to the receptionist and they set up their next call in a month and a half. So they all know when they're next going to speak with you. I've had clients, and guys, I adjust this, but I've had a client who, needed a lot of advising, needed me to
Mhm.
speak with her a lot, had a fairly complex case, international relocation to Africa, and, a lot going on for her. So what I did with her is I set her for a biweekly phone call with me, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. So she didn't call and email. And again, the other problem she was having is she would get her bill and she'd be like, "Why is this $6,000?" I'm like, "We had a hearing and mediation and you called me 15 times. I
Mhm.
don't I spoke to you, but you're now mad at me that I was responsive." So it became this way to adjust. So for her, what seemed to work for her was having this biweekly phone call. Again, it reduced the emails and pop-ups, time vampires, right? Because that also isn't respectful of your time. It
Mhm.
doesn't make you efficient and it doesn't make it so you can provide the best service to them. So this isn't you taking away from your clients. This is you making sure that you provide a way to provide a best service to them. You keep their expectations and they know they're going to speak with you. Sometimes that's the anxiety is, when am I going to talk to my lawyer? Get them on the phone now,
Mhm.
right? Whereas if they know in a month and a half they're going to have that prep call, it's already scheduled. It's kind of a, and when the receptionist gets on the phone or they call, you say, "Okay, well, excellent, I'm going to put this on the agenda for your call."
And is that what your expectation process, or how did you create your how did you create that expectation process or that expectation roadmap with your clients?
Well, I became very good and effective. So my clients, right, are very good and effective in a courtroom. So
Mhm.
I would get referrals of people who are like, they got a real complicated case, and I'm like, man. At first, I was like, man, it's gonna be so much work, and
Mhm.
I was like, so once I had a few clients who had very high needs, and I have a lot of high career demand clients as well. So it worked in balancing it in both directions.
Yeah.
I seem to have a lot of clientele that are business owners, small business owners, doctors. I represent a lot of lawyers in their divorces, a lot of those type of individuals. So what I need from them is I need to give them expectations so they meet my deadlines. I need you on this date to finish your financial affidavit, on this date with your mandatory disclosure, and then on this date you're going to speak to me because we are preparing for mediation and it's scheduled, right? So it
Mhm.
it keeps them on track, the clients who maybe you won't hear from, but you still need to represent them.
Yep.
Um, it keeps them on track. And then it also works well for some of the people who wanted to speak so frequently that they would spend their whole retainer before we got to meat and potatoes of their case, i.e., going to mediation or taking it to a hearing or trial. So it balanced it in both directions, that my non responsive people had deadlines and appointments, so they knew to show up or get it done. And
Yep.
then my very responsive, very inquisitive clients also had expectations and they had kind of a stopgap for their anxiety because and this happens, I'm sure, in criminal law too. They're very
It
anxious
does.
about what's going to happen. Their future is in the balance and they're freaking out.
Yes.
So but I'm still not your therapist.
Right.
I work in a courtroom. Courthouses are only open from 9 to 4.
Mhm.
RJA stop answering the phone at 4. And that's when I can be effective. So here's this, it's scheduled, you're going to be okay. Again, I'm not saying it works for everybody, but it's about keeping them all in line in what to expect. And I usually have the talk with them in my first consult. Hey, we're a very tech savvy firm, so everything you'll get from us will be digital. You'll be signing things digitally. You'll be, we even have a virtual notary service that we provide, right? I had my staff become trained and certified for that. And we even we'll collect all your documents digitally. So if you come into our office and you bring me a stack of papers, you're going to sit down and wait while we scan them, and you're going to take them back because I'm not holding them. So it's all of those kind of things. It's, again, you're going to do it's a lot of like client education and
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work on everybody, right? So that's the other thing. You always have the outliers that are like, I just don't understand why I can't just call. I had a client, and he came around once I won his trial. But he felt as though it was unfair because his ex could call her attorney at any time and get them on the phone, and they would immediately send an email. And it sometimes would take me a day or two because I'm not going to get in my email inbox and have an instant messenger chat with opposing counsel because the two of them disagreed on a haircut.
Right.
I'm not doing it. So once he learned in the course of trial how much she spent on attorney's fees and how much he spent on attorney's fees, I went, yeah, I did that for you, friend.
Right.
You're welcome.
Yep.
You're welcome. I slowed you down for you.
Mm-hmm. And so you talked about how you've found yourself in a place where you represent a lot of professionals and business owners. Was that you consciously niching down into representing only this type of client, or was it you had better cases, better case results, and those cases sort of found you?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of both. So it started finding me very often. So I leaned into it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
rather than going against the grain, I leaned into that subset of people. Soon as I started having success for them, a lot of medical professionals, I have a lot of firefighters, and they it kept finding me. So I started to lean in and create the kind of services that would work for them and their needs, right? They in particular have that need for efficiency. And I have a need to also be efficient and not be a micromanager. So it tends to match pretty well. They really do want to be very educated when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
these things. And they want to have the opportunity to ask very specific questions that they couldn't find on the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the internet is a vast place of much information. So you can find the generals, right? Florida has shared parental responsibility and equitable distribution, and child support is guidelines. But what they really need to know is, how does that work when I own a business and my
Mm-hmm.
business pays certain expenses? How does that work, right? How will that work for me? They need to ask those questions. They don't need questions on like, shared parental responsibility. They don't need to ask that because they know.
Yep.
Yeah, they did their research.
They already did their homework.
Yeah, yeah. And then they landed on me, right? So it typically makes sense for them because they see the kind of questions and answers that I give in my public forum, and that I have the ability to run through a pretty specific strategy. So I do try to focus, going back to the beginning, focus my consultations on what their strategy is going to look like, as opposed to me just spitting information in their face. They don't need that.
I like that. I like how you focus
Yeah.
on, okay, this is what the strategy is going to be, because that's something that we have put into our consults, is that, okay, looking at this case based on what you're telling me, this would be our strategy going forward, because this may give rise to a motion to suppress. This may give rise to a motion for this or a motion for that. This may show that this is a problem for this officer, for this DA's case. So
Right.
I like
Right.
that,
And
sort of giving them a roadmap.
yeah, and in our chat GPT world, right, in our very world, people don't need just information, right? I had those cases that came out on the news where a robot could handle these defense cases. I'm sure you heard about that very well, but not when it has very specific intricacies. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of a strategy with options. A lot of
Yes.
times when I present strategy to my client, I say we could go this way, or do a combination of the two. You could do A and B, just A, just B, or neither, and you could sit back and let it happen.
Right.
So that's something that kind of critical thinking is where the value for lawyers really are, and that I don't see that really being replaced. Now, again, in being very comfortable with your AI and chat GPT, that's why we make these automated videos on the things that are the simplistic, right? It's why you do it, it's why I do it, because where I really bring the value is when you don't know what you're going to do with the 5 businesses you and your wife own and
Mm-hmm.
your 3 children, when both of you have chaotic work hours and a nanny. How do you
Mm-hmm.
prove that one parent should win custody or the other, or the reality that Florida doesn't really do custody like that? How does
Mm-hmm.
that work for you?
Right.
Yeah.
And it really gets back to what I found in the last 6-ish months is that what clients want more than anything, and this is across the board, regardless of generation, is they do want education and options.
Yep.
They want to understand, okay, this and this and this and this is what can happen in the case. And based on that, we can do these things. And out of that, you would have option A or option B. You get to decide that.
Yeah.
And that is what
And they
I
really
found to
want
be,
that.
yeah, that's one of the things
Go
I
ahead.
found to be one of the most effective things with clients is whenever you can give them education. And based on that education, I believe these would be your ultimate options.
Yeah, and by that education and options, they have control over their case.
Yes.
Whereas when they came to you, they felt like everything was very out of control, right? This is happening to me. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
happening to it. So we give
Mm-hmm.
them that power to take back and happen to the thing and at least have some control over it because, it's a really unfortunate reality for us that we're given the law and we're given
Mm-hmm.
the facts and then we have to somehow take those 2 ingredients and make soup that the judge will eat.
Right. That's
Yeah.
that the soup that the judge will want to eat. Hopefully, that's the
Right, and
biggest part. Hopefully the judge will want to eat my soup in the first place. So
right, and then
that in its own is a struggle. So
yeah, sometimes you present it and the judge is like, "I don't like soup." I'm like, "Oh."
yeah, that's
Happens.
definitely a reality, especially in the world of criminal
Yeah,
defense. So
yeah.
well, we have gotten to we've gotten past the 45-minute mark now,
I
and
just didn't shut up, huh?
no, I mean that's why we have these things, is so that way people can share and talk and do these things. But at this point, this is where we ask that question: what is your citizen effect going to be? How are you going to take the space or spaces that you are in, whether it be in the legal market, whether it be in your community in Orlando, Florida, whether it be something to do with the clients that you serve? How are you going to take that and make it better than you found it?
So I really truly have a strong belief that, people having a happier life will also create this butterfly effect of a better impact. So it's my goal with all of my cases is to make the best decisions that are the most advantageous for my client. I often say, is the juice worth the squeeze? So
Mm-hmm.
when I have cases that are have children in them, my goal is to make sure that those children's lives are the least amount negatively affected by the divorce. And sometimes it's important for me to mention that a divorce isn't necessarily what is harmful to your children. Sometimes that like stagnant chaos or even that underlying smolder of hate with your
Mm-hmm.
spouse shows your children a very negative day-to-day life. You
Yes.
didn't do right by them. So I do good and help families. And one time my son said that to his teacher at school. His teacher said, "Oh, your mommy goes to court and is a lawyer." And he was probably 5. So, I explained to him what I do in a way if I thought a 5-year-old would understand. And he was like, "No, my mommy helps families when they're having a hard time. That's what she does." He was like so mad. He was like, "She said you went to court." And I said, so it's like that. And that is really what I believe that I do is help families to find a way to come out on the other side of this. Because when lawyers leave their life, it's a vacuum, or it
Yep.
could be if you don't guide your clients to find a way to communicate, meet a common ground, come up with a parenting plan that works for their unique circumstances. Even if it means arguing something unique to a judge, I'm not afraid to do that. So I think my effect on families is positive. I try to make it net positive. in overall. And sometimes I'm like, do you think that's even fair? You think a judge would rule that? That doesn't make any sense. Even if my client thinks they're going to get a very high alimony award, I'm like, say you get this high alimony award and they can't actually afford it, and then you have to spend $10,000 or $15,000 on me enforcing it against him for the next few years to come. Did I do right by you? No,
Mm-hmm.
I lined my pockets, right? Because I know he can't make that payment. His finances don't dictate that he could reasonably make that payment. We're going to be right back here, or he's going to try to modify it, and then you got another $7,000 case just to do that. You
Mm-hmm.
don't win. So let's find a alimony amount that he actually can afford and will pay. We have
Yep.
to find that. So that's the net benefit, is that she doesn't need to be a lifetime client trying to get alimony that he really couldn't afford in the first place. So it's a balance, and it's finding that balance with everybody, especially when they're going through this. It's every problem you could think of, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're It's a breakup, it's their financial future, it's their ability to retire, it's the home that they own, it's their children, it's how their
Yep.
children are raised, where their children will go to school, what they'll do with their debts, right?
Yes.
We touch everything. So the idea is to make it net positive for them as much as is possible in a divorce, right?
Right. Well, and I love that you try to inject reasonableness into the conversation and what's fair, and not just fair to the other party. It's what's fair to you, because it's not fair to you to keep coming back and paying me for every modification, or to otherwise enforce something that was borderline enforceable in the first place. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a wonderful place to end this at, is
Yeah.
injecting reasonableness into the legal process.
Sounds wild, right?
Right, but it's something that's so easily lost on clients, as well as lawyers for that matter. So obviously on
Yeah.
lawyers, because lawyers are the ones who can perpetuate these unreasonable alimony amounts or unreasonable demands on the defendant or on the people involved in the divorce, whatever it may be. So
Yeah, I tell my clients all the time, sometimes I'm advocating for you to you. And
that's, yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast. One more time for
Yeah.
everybody listening, where can they find you on the internet, social, things like that?
Morse-firm.com, which also has links to all the social and everything there. But we have a Legal Morse of Action podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube. We have videos there, and Legal Morse of Action on Instagram, and Law Office of Erin Morse on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
And again, I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yeah, thanks you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, this has been the Citizen Effect Podcast. As always, I'm Keith Whiddon, 100% of Whiddon Criminal Defense and 50% of Erase My Arrest. And we look forward to seeing everybody on the next Citizen Effect Podcast.